Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be going over my favorite picture book authors for lower elementary, kindergarten through second or third grade. Now these are not all my authors that I read to my students, but they're my top 8, my favorite picture book authors for lower elementary. So to begin with, if you've watched any of my videos, you would already know this for sure. My number 1 favorite picture book author for kids is Barnett. He just writes such brilliant stories. They're funny, they're smart. Kids are always engaged. The illustrations tell a story on their own. Words and pictures together are just magic. I have several of his books. Sam and Dave Dig a Hole, Extra Yarn. This one won the Caldecott honor for illustrations. I have also President Taft is Stuck in the Bath, which I read for my students on one of my other videos. And so many others. Barnett is such a gem, so if you're looking for good books, I highly recommend him. Oh yeah, and The Skunk too. He's also written The Skunk. Okay, secondly is actually a woman who really inspired Barnett, as he likes to share. She was a great influence on his early years, and her name is Margaret Wise Brown. She's written so many classics. I'm sure you've heard of Goodnight Moon. A couple of my favorites of hers are Big Red Barn. This is a really sweet book, and also Christmas in the Barn. So yeah, if you notice the theme there, she likes farm animals, barns, but she writes about a whole range of things, and her stories are just really, really heartfelt and warm, and kids just love hearing them again and again. Okay, my third, these are not in any particular order, but my third favorite that I'm going to share with you today is Barbara Park. Yep, she is the author of the Junie B. Jones series. And here are just some of them to show you. Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. P.S. So does May. Junie B. Jones' nemesis in first grade. We have Junie B. Jones and That Meanie Jim's Birthday. Junie B. Jones Goes to Hawaii. And a whole bunch of other ones. Oh, I love this one for Thanksgiving. Turkeys We Have Loved and Eaten. So you just can't go wrong with Barbara Park. There's a whole plethora of Junie B. Jones. These are just a few. And you can definitely look those up and share those with your students because I think they will love them. Another one of my absolute favorites is Kate DiCamillo. She wrote Because of Winn-Dixie, the whole Decawoo Drive series, Tales from Decawoo Drive. Here's Leroy Ninker's story. She wrote The Tale of Despero, which I've read with my students. And she has the whole Mercy Watson series. Mercy Watson is part of the Decawoo Drive gang. And the Mercy Watson series, I read online. I have the digital format of her books, of that whole series, because I like to read those with my student online. There's a student I have that we read that together for our English language arts together. So another favorite of mine is a classic that I'm sure you've all heard of, and that is Robert McCloskey. He has written such classics as Make Way for Ducklings, which won the Caldecott Medal for the year it was written, and Lentil. He's also written Blueberries for Sal, which I really want to add to my library. You just can't go wrong with Robert McCloskey. He's the author and illustrator of his books. They're just books that stand the test of time, and kids want to hear them over and over again. So once again, here's an example of Robert McCloskey. Okay, another classic treasure of an author is Virginia Lee Burton. I've actually read this story for my students, as well as Calico the Wonder Horse, which is on my channel. Virginia Lee Burton also wrote and illustrated her stories. She just had a very keen understanding of childhood and the way children experience the world around them, and that is always reflected in her stories. It's also noted that she would read these stories over and over to her children to make sure that kids actually enjoyed the story, and she would go through all that process before ever publishing one of her books, and you can really feel that in her stories. They are just precious and wonderful. Another favorite is Cynthia Rylant. I have discovered her more recently, actually. I stumbled across this story, and that's how I discovered her. The Relatives Came, which is a Caldecott honor book. Her stories are just very warm and nostalgic, and really just remind you of your own childhood. And I think that's why kids love to hear them, because they're so relevant to the way a child experiences the world. Next we have Chris Van Dusen. Here's an example of one of his stories. He has a Mr. McGee series. This one is Learning to Ski with Mr. McGee by Chris Van Dusen. He's the author and illustrator of his own books, but fun fact is, here's a double whammy. You get Mac Barnett as the author and then Chris Van Dusen as illustrator. So he actually illustrated this famous book that I love so dearly. So yes, if you like rhyming stories, Chris Van Dusen is your guy, because rhyming children's stories that are good are sometimes hard to find. It takes a special knack for getting that rhyme just right. And he is, I think, a master of that. And you could really tell when you read the stories, the kids just are hanging on every last word. Last, but definitely not least, is Max Lucado. He's written stories such as Because I Love You and You Are Special. And his stories are really very meaningful. They always have a message. They're always very heartfelt, and they're very poignant. I remember the first time I read this out loud to a kindergarten class. The kids were so eager and so fascinated by the story. They were so curious. They had so many questions. He's an excellent storyteller. His writing draws the children in and adults and really just captures your attention and tells a beautiful story that stays with you. So I highly recommend him. Now I'm going to throw in a bonus favorite author, and that is the one and only Jamie Lee Curtis. Yes, if you're like me, then you probably had no idea that she was a children's author or picture book author. I certainly didn't until I was looking for a certain type of story and came across her books, which are just so fun. This one is called I'm Gonna Like Me, Letting Off a Little Self-Esteem. Her stories are also rhyming. And Today I Feel Silly and Other Moods That Make My Day. I want to show you something cool in this book. It's all about the vast range of emotions that we all experience. Sometimes even we all experience in the course of a day. But at the last page here, you get this really cool wheel where it says, how do you feel today? I know my kids love to just spin this, and it shows all the different emotions. Angry, silly, happy, excited, cranky, and so on and so forth. And the eyes also change. So this is a great book for social emotional learning and just understanding how to express ourselves, express our emotions, and be honest about the way we're feeling with each other. So that's a great one. That's it. Those are my top 9 favorite picture book authors for lower elementary, ages 5 to 8 or 9. And if you liked any of the books that you saw today or authors that you learned about today, go ahead and look them up. You can check them out at Barnes & Noble. You can look them up on Amazon and really dive into the stories, because it's always a wonderful thing to be able to discover a new author and a new way of storytelling, or a new series for your class or your own kids. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, adios.